Hey, it's Stephanie with the Rancher's Homestead. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do a canning project. So I am going to use my Denali Canning pressure canner here that is suitable for my glass top stove. And today we are going to can black beans. There's a couple of reasons why I like to can my own beans at home. Now, beans have to be canned in a pressure canner. So I love using my Denali Canning, the tanker pressure canner, because well, there's a couple of reasons, and if you've watched any of my videos, you'll know why. But one of the main reasons is it's suitable for all stovetops. So glass top, induction, or even a gas stovetop. They're all suitable for this. So I love that I can use it on any stovetop that I want. I have glass. I never worry once. It's very lightweight. I actually already have water and my jars in, so it's a little bit heavier right now. But it's very lightweight to fit on your glass top stove. And the other reason is that it is very simple to use. So it has an automatic vent. So once you get your food in your jars and you put them in the can and you lock your lid into place, really there's no more timer setting that you need to do. You just basically wait it out, wait for the pressure to build, then you can start your timer, cook your food for as long as it needs to be cooked, or process it in the canner for as long as it needs to be processed. And then you turn it off once the timer goes off and let it come all the way down and let it just sit and wait until 20 minutes after. It's very, very simple to use and easy, but I'm going to show you today how to do it. I've already washed my pint-sized jars and I have them here in my canner and they're just staying warm right now. And then over here, I have had my beans soaking for about 8 hours. So there are a couple reasons why I like to can my own beans at home. And the number one reason is that it's really cheap. So dry beans are incredibly cheap. You can get 25-pound, 50-pound bags of dry beans that last so long in a nice Gamma-Seal bucket for, I can't even tell you. I mean, I think I've bought it in the last 5 years. I've bought 25 pounds of black beans twice. So they last forever, and you don't have to continuously buy them over and over again. The other reason why I like to can my own beans at home is I am in control of how much salt or no salt that I put in my beans. I do put salt in my canned beans. I feel like they give them just a little bit of flavor. But if you don't want to put salt in them, you don't have to. I typically do a half of a teaspoon in pint-sized jars, and I do 1 teaspoon in quarts. So I'm in control of that, of how much I put in there. And the last reason why I like to can my own beans at home is because when you give them a good long soak before you can them, it breaks down the phytic acid in any kind of legumes. So your beans or any kind of legumes. And when you break down that phytic acid, it's much easier to process it. So they're just easier to digest. I mean, it's kind of the running joke that beans make you gassy or give you digestive problems. When you soak them longly, they don't typically do that. And so I like to do a nice long soak on my beans, typically 24 hours. I'm doing a little short today. A little tip for you is you can fill it with water, bring it to a boil, and then turn it off, cover it, and let it sit for an hour, and it kind of does the same thing. So if you're in a hurry, you can always soak them that way. But now we're going to go ahead and take these soaked beans. We're going to wash them and rinse them, or drain this water and rinse them. And then we're going to turn it on for about 30 minutes to let these beans cook. Okay, so I recovered the beans with water to about 2 inches over. Went ahead and turned my stovetop on to high, and I'm gonna give these about a 30-minute cook. They are not going to be anywhere near done. They're still gonna be hard. The rest of the cooking process will happen in the canner. And so while these are cooking, it's really a good time to wash your jars and get them into the canner to stay warm. I already did that process, so I will see you back here in 30 minutes, and we'll fill our jars with the beans. have been going for about 30 minutes, and now we're gonna go ahead and get our jars filled. If there's any foam on the top, you can go ahead and skim that off. It just kind of happens with the beans when you cook them. Like I said before, I go ahead and give these a long soak, so that's why I cook them. All I'm really doing is getting them heated through and letting them absorb a little bit more of the water to give me that proper headspace. With beans, you want to make sure you're giving a very, very generous 1-inch headspace. So I would even do kind of 1.25 inches. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of seepage coming out of it because they're going to expand a lot more in the canner. I'm going to go ahead and fill each of these jars to a 1-inch headspace, probably just even a little bit less than that. I go ahead and drain some of the water out of my ladle and just fill them with the beans. Once I have all of my beans in, that's when I'll go ahead and add some liquid to it. Okay, now that all of my jars are filled with the beans, I'm gonna go ahead and do a 1/2 teaspoon of salt in each jar. I like to do pint-sized jars because they're most like a can of beans from the store in terms of size. So when I'm following a recipe and it calls for 1 can of black beans or 1 can of pinto beans, I know 1 jar of these is fairly close. So for my size family, I don't typically double a recipe. I usually just do 1 of whatever the recipe is because it usually fits my family. So there's no reason for me to do it in bigger jars than that. Now I will take some hot water here and I'm just going to fill the rest of my jars to that 1-inch headspace. Now, like I said before, I kind of give it a really generous 1-inch headspace. I do not go overboard. I kind of just go a little bit less than the brim of the jar or the neck of the jar. Another little tip is I like to use wide mouth jars. They make the beans so much easier to get out when you're using them in a recipe. So just a little tip for you. That always makes it much nicer. Okay. Now you're gonna go ahead and take the back of a wooden spoon, or I use this little, I don't even know what it's called, but just a little canning tool that you can also gauge your headspace right here on or measure it. But I'm gonna take the back of that and stick it inside the jar a couple times. You just wanna make sure to get out any air pockets. Once you have done that, you're gonna take a clean dish towel. You can dip it in some white vinegar. I just have it wet here. And you're going to wipe each of your rims. You want to make sure that you get any particles off of your jars. If it has any salt or anything else on the rim of your jars, they won't seal. Okay, now we're ready to cap our jars and put our rings on. So I'm using Denali Canning's wide mouth lids here, and they are my favorite lids. So I use them for all canning projects. They have a preserve lock, so they give me a perfect seal every single time. You can really hear that suction when I go to crack a jar open, and I've been very, very pleased with them. And then I'll go ahead and put my Denali Canning rings on to hold them into place. You want to go ahead and screw your lids down fingertip tight. This just means that you are going to screw them down until you hit resistance, and then you're going to stop. You do not want to really crank them down, or you could get your lids will start to bow up and they won't get a proper seal. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and get them into the canner. So I have several inches of water here in my tanker pressure canner. And so you're going to place your jars in. I have 8 pints of beans here. The canner holds 8 pints very snugly, You can do 7 a little bit looser, but I find that 8 fits fine as long as you strategically get them in there. Okay, now all of my jars are in and they're nice and snug, but they aren't touching. You want your water to be about 1/4 to 1/2 way up the jars so that it doesn't boil out while it is going through the pressure canning process. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my Denali Canning lid on. The weight is already on, so it'll come with a 10-pound weight or a 15-pound weight. And here in Missouri, I'm gonna use the 15 pounds. So you'll have to decide which one is right for your elevation in the area that you are at. I never take my weight off. It always stays on even when I'm storing it because it has an automatic vent, so you don't have to take it off. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick my lid on, and you're just gonna slide it right into place. You line it up with the grooves and then slide it into place. You'll hear the click and the vent come up. Now I'm gonna turn my stove on to, I have it on about 6. Again, I have an electric glass top stove, so I'm gonna turn it on to about 6. And I'm just gonna let it do its thing. I'm gonna process these pint-sized jars for 1 hour and 15 minutes once it reaches pressure. If I were to do quart-sized jars, I do 1 hour and 30 minutes. I won't start that timer until this has built pressure and I see my weight start to jiggle and hum, which tells me that it has reached pressure. This will vent itself and then seal it off and start building pressure once it is all done. So at this step, you don't need to do anything more, but just stay in earshot so you can start your timer once it's at the appropriate pressure. So the canner has been going here for about 35 minutes now, and as you can hear, this is the sound it will make as it is processing. So once it's reached the right pressure, it'll start to hum and jiggle like this, and it'll continue to do this the entire time. I like to just let it go. If it gets really wild and crazy, I'll try and turn it down just slightly on my stovetop. But you want to make sure that you're hearing this the entire time. Otherwise, it is not at the right pressure for the amount of time that the jars need to be processed. So we will let this go for 1 hour and 15 minutes for my pint jars. If you're doing quart jars, you will do 1 hour and 30 minutes. Once the timer goes off, you can go ahead and turn your stovetop off. Okay, the timer has gone off, so I'm going to go ahead and turn my stovetop off. Now I'm just going to let this sit here for a minimum of 20 minutes after the dial goes all the way down to 0. So the nice thing about the Denali canner is that you don't have to wait for it to go down and then remove your lid right away. In fact, the longer it sits, the better. And so I will let mine sit for a minimum of 20 minutes, but usually it's hours. I just kind of forget about it. And then once I remember, I go and take the lid off and pull my jars out. So now at this point, just let it come down slowly all by itself. I hope this video was helpful for you. I hope that you were able to see the Denali canner in action and how it works. No matter what the foods are, the process is still the same in terms of how you click the lid on, let it wait until it vents itself. It'll seal, build pressure. Those steps all remain the same. Just the processing time and the headspace will differ depending on the food that you use. But simple, very simple to use. I love my Denali canner. It has been such a blessing on these glass top stoves because I don't have to worry about it breaking or anything like that. Make sure to like and subscribe to the video. I send out one new video every single week. Jump on over to the blog. The link is in the description. And join our email community. Over there, I send out one email a week on Tuesdays with ranch life, recipes, farm life, all the things. And I hope this video was helpful for you, and we'll see you next time. Take care.